Hello everyone, welcome to another live stream from Kudo Camera Company. I'm just getting the cameras turned on here and we will roll. Okay. So this is a new channel, so I'm still working on some of my technical parts of it. The main issue that I've found that I'm having is my wireless mouse is kind of having a hard time communicating with the computer, which is on the other side of the wall there. So it's all right. I'm having a good time, and I got this. I love photography. I've got all my cameras back here and everything like that. So I figured this would be a great way to promote the company, Kudo Camera Company, and hopefully get to know some people over the conversation. Hopefully we'll get some good conversations going. Today I want to talk about cleaning this Mamiya 55mm f1.4. It's a beautiful lens. It's got a chrome nose. So let's switch over to the macro view so everyone can get a closer look at it. Let's see if I can get this. Here we go. So the wired mouse is probably going to be my next investment. I see some people have really cool stream decks. That would probably be maybe my second or third next improvement I'll make. But for now, let's see. I hope I don't have to go into the other room to switch camera views. Boy. So partly why I do these live as well is because I have a really busy schedule and I don't want to have to go back and edit these as well afterwards. So part of the fun is you get to see all these Wayne's World style transitions, I suppose, where you get to see me kind of hurting on some of these transitions. But stick with me. We'll get in some good camera talk and see how we do. So here is the Mamiya 55mm f1.4. As you can see, there's a ton of glass here. It's absolutely a gorgeous lens, and the chrome nose and some of the it looks kind of like an aluminum base here, but the polished, I call it chrome. It could be aluminum anyways, but I typically will describe this as a chrome nose. The size of the glass on this is just tremendous. These lenses, they're all a little bit different with what you end up seeing when you use it. But one of the characteristics they all have is they're going to have a ton of bokeh. They're going to be lightning quick. Any of these vintage 50mm or 55mm f1.4, and they're going to be really affordable. When you start to get ones that, like this particular one that has the chrome nose, it does have a little bit of damage here where on this manual auto switch has chipped off a little bit here. So I've been holding on to this one, looking to get some replacement parts for it. I'd like to switch this out because besides that little defect, it's really a beautiful lens. So let's see how this thing comes apart. And I know I've taken plenty of these Mamiyas apart in the day, but let's just take a look at this one and see how it comes apart and see how we do taking it apart and putting it back together. Well, let's start with the what I consider the easiest part of taking it apart. We're going to try the front lens fitting, the nameplate. So this particular nameplate doesn't have any holes for a spanner wrench. So this is a spanner wrench. If you've seen my videos before, you know how dangerous these spanner wrenches can be. They're very pointy, and they just are made to scratch glass, basically. So I only use those as a last resort, or if I'm feeling extra lazy, I might use it, but I've definitely had my fair share of incidents with those, so I try to stay away from them. So again, on these, they're called vacuum pads. You're going to have they nest into each other, so you have all different sizes. You can use the front or back. So that one was a little too big. This one's just right. And basically what we're going to start out by doing is trying to unscrew this. Let me just clear out a little bit of space here. There we go. So it feels like it broke free. Sometimes what I'll do to make sure it's actually spinning, I'm going to line up with my finger. I see the 55s there, so when I can't see it, it's kind of blind and a little tough. Yeah, it's moved over to here now, so I know it's working. So just going to use that to get that nameplate off. Most nameplates do come off by unscrewing them like this. When you're first getting into lens repair or lens cleaning, it's kind of a mystery how these things come apart until you get a tool like this. Some people I've mentioned, some people use a film canister with tape on it, but unless you have a ton of different size film canisters, it's not going to fit everything you need. So I don't ever recommend doing a film canister with double-sided tape. Just get some of these vacuum pads. The number one place I go for this particular tool is Japan Hobby Tool. I find a hard time searching for Japan Hobby Tool on eBay and having it come up. So typically what I do is I'll go to Google and I type in Japan Hobby Tool eBay. And it's amazing. Sometimes Google does a better job of searching the eBay store than eBay does. So at any rate, so now we've got the nameplate off. And will the lenses just fall up? Nope, they're in there still. Okay. So now here you see some of the holes that I was talking about. So you've got a set of holes across from each other here and there. So this inner set of holes is going to help me remove or access the front element. The second set of hole of grooves there are going to take out the set of lenses or the group of optics there. So one thing I would recommend too, just while we're talking about it, when you're cleaning, it's always good to get yourself some powder-free nitrile gloves. That's what I use. Some people might have other things that they like to use. I know in the past I've used cotton gloves, but they were a little bit harder to find. These ones I get them from a dental supply on a dental supply store on eBay. So if we can't get these optics off, we'll use these dreaded spanner wrenches to get in there. But first what we're going to do is just go back to our trusty old, what are these things called again? Vacuum pads. You definitely want to get yourself a set of vacuum pads. So we're going to see, this one seems to fit pretty well. It's probably going to want to take out both elements, but for the sake of it, let's just give it a try. So apply a little downward pressure, and so now that's coming out. So there are so many parts to take apart on a lens. If you're just doing a basic light cleaning, maybe getting out some heavy duty dust that's inside there, or you see maybe a speck of fungus and you want to go in and get rid of it, you can remove fungus with hydrogen peroxide pretty well. And some people will go the next step and try to kill any remains there with a little bit of ammonia. But one thing to warn about is that ammonia and hydrogen peroxide, when they are mixed, they form a noxious gas or some sort of a toxic gas. So I don't recommend doing that at all. So now we've got this apart. We've made some decent progress. Sometimes you might have just a speck of dust right there. So if that's where your dust is, what I always recommend doing before going on to any sort of lens tissues, before doing the lens tissues, try your blower. So if you always, I'm going to illustrate it like this, but always blow it down so it doesn't get any dust that lands on it. But basically, if you can blow it and it's going to clear out the dust, you never have to put any humidity on it. You don't have to wipe it. Lens tissues, they must have little specks of dust on them. So they're great to wipe away anything that's dirty, but at the end, it's always good to give it a nice strong blow. These vacuum pads are great to rest your lenses on too while you're working on them. So there's a pretty heavy speck of dust, but it's on the outside. Okay, well, you know, now at this point you can really get in there and blow off of this surface as well. This is about as far in as you can get on this side without going in to the back. So on the back, you'd be amazed at how many you can just twist off with your fingers. This one is not allowing me to do that. Oh, I got a little mark there with just, I'll clean it up after. On these lenses, it's best to keep on these trim pieces if you can and work around it. So that's another great reason to try these vacuum pads. If you've got a vacuum pad that fits on there, like this little guy, we're going to be able to get in there and possibly remove some of these elements that way. So take this, put it right on the glass, apply some nice downward pressure, give it a twist, see if it will come off. Is it coming off? No. So the harder they are to come off, you know, you eventually have to go inside. Let me try it on the table here and see if I can get some real pressure on it. Oh no, that did not work. All right, so what we're gonna do is use these dreaded beasts that I try to stay away from at all cost, but nonetheless, I think I can access. There's a little slot here and a little slot there, and it looks like if I get it just right, I can probably get in there. So okay, I really hope I'm not gonna, this is live video, so there's not gonna be any beeps. If I'm gonna make sure I don't swear if I scratch this glass, especially considering this lens actually doesn't even really need to be cleaned because I already inspected it and went through it. But nonetheless, you know how everyone likes to take lenses apart for fun. Oh, look at that, it was nice and easy. But still, having these around your lens at all is a major risk. So there's no sense in doing it unless it won't come apart any other way. You see those, can you see there's smudges on here now? Let's see if the smudges will go away just with a lens tissue only. Always breathe before using the lens tissue. They did. So if they were really bad smudges, that's where I go in with some Zippo fluid. I hope eventually I'll learn exactly what the alternative solution, literally solution as in a liquid, instead of Zippo is that I should be using. Once I get through that bottle of Zippo, I'm gonna get the right chemical for the job. So now at this point, I've got this pretty far deep assembled. At this point, you can see I'm down to the aperture blades. So we're just straight through at this point. You can see. So that's pretty cool. At this point, I feel like I was just mishandling that a little bit. I kind of I palmed it. So luckily there's no dust that got on the inside here with me doing this. And at this point, what I always recommend, if the inside needed a clean, we would clean it by doing our normal steps. That's going to be first use the blower, then use the brush, a nice soft brush. Like this one's pretty premium, Purdy brush that I'll use to dust away anything that's stuck on there. I always keep that brush separate. Yeah, I keep an optics brush and then a body brush so I don't mix them. Because if you use a brush to clean your body, it's going to end up being way too dirty to clean your optics. So, and then if need be, I finish it off with the Zippo to really give it a nice clean finish. And then a lot of times I'll go back over it with my breath and just fog it up a bit and then use a lens cloth and then kind of go back in reverse order to where you use the blower at the very end, again, to get anything that's left on. But if this side is clean and I can assemble the lens partially before I clean the back side, that's always what I'll do. So this one's pretty easy. Not all of them are going to be this easy to get apart. And actually, just while we have it apart, there's even more that you can do to take this particular lens apart. See, there's a little slot here. Even though that slot was what helped me get it out, it looks like you can, if I gave this a hard enough twist, I bet I could separate these lens elements out, and possibly even on this side as well. So what I recommend, if you can, before you start working on your lens, look for a good lens diagram of your actual lens. That's going to give you a lot better sense of how the elements are grouped together, and to know if something is actually glued together, then some elements will be glued together. You won't be able to get them apart. So it'd be nice to know that before you start trying to separate it out. So much of this information is sort of lost to time, but luckily with the digital age, people are scanning old PDFs and old repair manuals that will show you how lenses were built. So, but one thing I found is they're actually all they're quite similar. Zoom lenses are always much more of a pain to get together, but I'll polish that up at the end, because I'll still probably touch it a bit while I'm getting this together. So in this case too, on this front fitting, I bet you this one will come off. It might need to get soaked in some alcohol, so I'll use some alcohol or to break down if there's any adhesive there. And what I never recommend is don't ever use channel grip pliers to grip onto any part of a lens. It's just a surefire way to crack it. So what I'll do is, if something like this, I know this unscrews because it's a retaining ring that holds on this back element, I'll put in some alcohol and just kind of let it sit, and then give it some time and just keep working it until eventually it breaks free. I'm not going to get too bogged down on this, but if this was what I was working on, if I really needed to get in there, I'd be able to get in there, most likely by doing this. But one other thing I'll tell you is, if you can't get in this way and you're feeling like, maybe you're doing something wrong, maybe if you take off this front clip, you'll be able to get to whatever debris is in there. So what I recommend is don't beat your head or be stubborn. Don't beat your head against the wall or be stubborn with trying to get in a certain way. If you can't get in the way that you're trying, try to go in a different way. So in this case, while these two spinner wrench tips, I can adjust it to fit into these holes. See how I just bumped the lens? Luckily it didn't scratch it. What you want to do before you resort to that is try to get the right vacuum pad to get on there, get it lined up properly, and give it a good twist. Okay, is it going? I've mentioned some before with a 55mm marking. If you line this up with your finger, then when you twist it, you'll know if you're getting any movement at all. So right now, I'm not getting any movement. So just to be a little bit stubborn, I'll use this spanner wrench. See how this side will go in there. Once you have it in, you want to make sure to tighten these up. See, you can just tell this is just a dangerous way to be operating, but it's necessary at times. So I'm twisting, and it's not coming apart. I know for sure it comes apart, but the question is, how badly do I want to get it apart right now for this demonstration? And realistically, if you look, this lens is in really ideal shape. So that's the struggle. You can see I'm not going to go any further with this right here because it is so obvious. I don't want to just do it to prove a point. Oh, fine, I'm going to do this until no. I think at this point you get the picture. It's not always easy, but now if you were watching this video to actually figure out how to do this, rub some alcohol in there. I'm not going to recommend other chemicals, but if you know much about chemicals, there's a lot of different ones that you can use to help release any sort of a bond. Sometimes you'd be surprised, but there's some adhesives that get put in the tracks. This particular one, I don't believe there would be any adhesive, but for some reason a little bit of alcohol around the edge can help break it down. One thing I will tell you, if you use any sort of a chemical to seep in along the edge, the worst thing that can happen is the chemical will go down in between the two lenses. So if you get to the point where you're willing to put in alcohol to break the bond, it should be for a really big speck of dust, because once you commit to doing that, if you get any alcohol that seeps down in between the lenses, you have to continue what you were doing. At that point, you hit the point of no return. So one thing with lens repair is you want to try to avoid the point of no return as much as possible. So if you get chemicals that spill down and go in between the two elements, you're at the point of no return. You have to get this retaining ring off and get it, straightened out inside there. So once you get it apart, you go through all the same process. First you blow it with the blower, then you clean it with the brush, and then you fog it up and you use a nice clean lens tissue. If you need to use Zippo lighter fluid to get the finish back restored, then I go backwards from there. So then I'll use the lens tissue to try to even out what I did with the Zippo. If need be, I could use the brush. At that point, I would try to probably even skip the brush and just go straight for the blower and just make sure there's nothing on there before we put it back in here. So taking lenses apart is actually, if you have enough time, it's not it's kind of fun. At first it seems like they're totally intimidating, but then after a while you kind of see the commonality between all the different lenses. If you have a lens that you have any questions about, just please comment and let me know. I'll see if I have one in my shop. We can try to take it apart and see how it goes back together. So this part, I'm surprised it's not going on quite as easily as normal. So what I'll do is just get one of those to apply some even pressure. The old trick that I always use is, if it's not going on, what I do is I go backwards until you feel it kind of level out and click. And once you feel it level out and click like that, sort of click, then you know it's really right at the groove point. You guys ever do that where you go backwards until you feel it click and then you know to move forwards? That's a good way to thread things. What you don't want to do is cross thread anything. If you cross thread, cross thread things, you'll never be happy after that. So the lens is pretty much back together now. So at this point it would be a good time to clean the back. Before I fully assemble it, I always take a good look at it with a flashlight and make sure there's nothing glaring sticking out. I brought my flashlight back into the other room for a lens that I sold. I had to inspect it, so I don't have the flashlight here, but I'll take a close look at this before going any further. As I mentioned, I'm not going to probably sell this one until I get this little piece here on the trim fixed. In order to fix that, what I'm going to have to do is use some of these really small screws on the side and lift this piece off, and hopefully it's a really easy replacement. But sometimes, what do? Do I sell this lens with a broken part? And of course I'll highlight that in my eBay ad and circle it. Even if you show it in a photo, you really want to, if you're selling on eBay, just like if you're buying, you want to make it obvious to someone that there's an issue, because if you don't, then they'll be upset and email you maybe afterwards and say, hey, there was this issue, I didn't notice it. And if you were to be the buyer and the seller said to you, well, it was in the photos, you didn't see it, well, that's not going to leave the buyer happy. So you definitely want to call it out and show it. Sometimes these parts lenses for some of these vintage ones are so hard to come by that you almost just want to just let it get out there and get used, you know, sell it as is. It's a beautiful lens with this chrome nose. I always look for the chrome nose lenses because whether it's the Canon FD with the chrome nose or any of the many Yashicas with the chrome nose, some of the Yashicas have the full chrome body. They're absolutely gorgeous lenses, and they have the bokeh on them is on a lot of them. It has nothing to do with the trim, of course, but one thing I've noticed about a lot of the chrome nose lenses are that they have a really, what I call a painterly bokeh. So it's not a very distracting bubble bokeh, which I love bubble bokeh, but sometimes you'd rather have a painterly bokeh. So it depends what you're shooting. You know, if you're shooting something with a lot of, say, Christmas tree lights or something, you want to show off the bubble bokeh, then that's a really good thing. But if you're doing a portrait and you want a really painterly bokeh in the background, maybe there's a garden in the background, and you want to really do a beauty portrait and show the subject, have them really pop against that background, then painterly bokeh is really good for that, I find. You don't want the background blur to distract from your portrait. So sometimes a painterly bokeh is what you really should go for, and other times you know a bubble bokeh can be really cool for a city shot. So if you have any questions about this particular lens or about any other lens, about taking them apart, feel free to comment, send a message. You can always find me on eBay and send a message. If I have any of the lenses here, I can start to take it apart and show you how I'm doing it. And if not, maybe it's something I can look up and see what the lens diagram looks like. So I really appreciate you tuning in, and I look forward to hearing from you. So keep in touch, and all the best in your photographic endeavors. Take care.